Hey neighbor, welcome back to ARTV. My name is John and it's time for a review of Album 3 by the sister act HAIM, aptly titled Women in Music Part 3. I've been aboard the HAIM train since 2013, shortly before the release of their debut album Days Are Gone. That's such a sizzling debut with fascinating hooks, stellar production, and of course great vocal chemistry between the sisters. That is a major selling point for them, something that actually makes them stand out as unique. 4 years later, they hit back with Something to Tell You, and after that long of a wait, the payoff just wasn't there. I'd even call this a sophomore slump, although the songs weren't awful, just forgettable and watered down compared to the invigorating hooks they were clearly capable of delivering. My hopes weren't exactly soaring for Album 3 after the release of the tedious single Summer Girl, but something that totally shocked me here, they actually booted all 3 of the original tracks that were dropped as singles for this record and intended for the album, and they put them all as bonus tracks, meaning that they won't factor into this review since I don't cover deluxe editions. There was a long wait between Album 1 and 2, and again, we've had delays surrounding this album, although those don't entirely fall on the sisters' shoulders. Obviously, we're dealing with a worldwide pandemic and unrest, a lot of uneasiness in the world, and everyone's reeling trying to recalculate their schedules, but I was still looking forward to this either way after they dropped one of the best songs they've ever made, The Steps, back in March. Two things that I think are worth mentioning right away. Number one, this feels like a bit of a return to the band's roots with a new twist, and two, this is the first record they put out in the wake of the Me Too movement, which really gained momentum in the fall of 2017, a few months after they released Something to Tell You. I say that because now, more so than ever before, this record feels confident to say or put on blast whatever or whoever they want to. Not that they didn't really do that before, but they've gained more empowerment as a result of it. Women in Music Part 3 ranges from classic HAIM bangers to more musically complex yet isolated pieces that orbit around topics of love, lust, sexism, and dreams over the course of 13 tracks. There's occasional guitar solos that spike like a solar flare, driving percussion that really feeds the beast on some of the best cuts like Gasoline, yet much of the album feels sparse and intimate at the same time, which does lead me to my next point that might just be a hot take. You know, even though much of this has really grown on me, I still can't help but hear the emptiness in some of these mixes. They've got some holy names from the production world working here, like Rostam Batman Glige and Ariel Reichschard, yet somehow a small handful of these tunes feel unfinished. Like a draft they started on, but they didn't quite bring full circle. That's cool if you're looking for a more raw side of the band, but there's a notable lack of propelling hooks on this album. Not to say that they're all forgettable or anything, but it just takes a minute to adjust your senses to their wavelength, like when you wake up and immediately see bright sunlight or something. The fact that they were willing to take a gamble on blending their sounds from both Album 1 and 2 is commendable, and it's all gonna boil down to preference. It's certainly more interesting than their last record. There's a lot to appreciate, from the striking drums to the slow burn solos. Even a large portion of the vocal moments highlight the magic of the band when they do break out, although I can't help but feel like they just lay a little bit too low too often in that regard. Women in Music Part 3 sounds rejuvenated and sleepy all at the same time. It's more of an intimate album, meaning I'd suggest a good headphone listen to truly fall into the atmosphere they're plotting out, but that still doesn't necessarily turn it to gold given the shortcomings I've already mentioned. It's frustrating and rewarding all at the same time, which is definitely a large part of why I wrestled my own brain so much back and forth when writing this review. Let's start out positive by putting a spotlight on two of the biggest shining stars this album has to offer. The Steps is HAIM firing on all cylinders set to a retro rock swing. It has a timeless feeling to it, yet they bring it to the modern hemisphere by unapologetically taking shots at a former lover who couldn't wrap his head around the fact that a woman didn't need him or his money to feel secure. The guitars are shiny and on point, and the slow to uncoil outro really grabbed my attention and furthered the fact that this is a big earworm that's gonna stay in rotation in fans' libraries for years to come. Gasoline also sparked up a big reaction, with its stomping, intrusive drums that really steal the show more and more as the song progresses. It's really all around an impressive high as the sultry guitars fan the flames of the sexy standout, lending Danielle's voice to melt like butter between the lines. To rewind a beat, Los Angeles kicks off the listen with a steady clapping drumline and a twinkling, summery, jazzy affectation that feels a little bit too much like a Vampire Weekend track. Oh, what's that? Rostam co-wrote and produced the track? You don't say. I mean, I actually quite like this track, but the influence, it's a bit more overbearing the more I hear it. 3 AM steps in with a lot of 90s R&B influence dripping from the core, relaying tales of late-night booty calls over dreamy keys, well-positioned bass hits, and a late-night loungy atmosphere that suits them better than I could have ever expected. I like this track a lot. Its vibe is very strong and its message is clear, although I do feel like the voicemail skit at the start, it runs on a bit too long. The merry-go-round of tumultuous love circles the drain again on the chiming Another Try, a slight dark passage with a really good warm chorus that does a good enough job at embedding itself in your head. However, right after that, we fall into the snoozer section of this record that really doesn't do much to impress, starting with Leaning on You. That one in particular feels overcooked when it comes to tossing it back to the sultry 70s flair, basically hitting you over the head with a musical feeling that sounds way too much like Fleetwood Mac, in particular the song Never Going Back Again. They've definitely had good Fleetwood Mac influences, although this one just feels too on the nose. They follow that up with the irritating, rambly I've Been Down that really missed the mark lyrically, especially with that rather cringy TikTok name drop. I'll admit that that's a personal pet peeve when people shout out social media networks and songs and stuff. It just feels tacky for the sake of being trendy, and 10 years from now, it might not even make sense. Things definitely pick back up by the time we land on All That Ever Mattered, which stands tall with a confident vocal showing and some trippy beat glitches, wild guitars, and background screams that really add to that alternate universe vibe they're laying down. I'm also a big fan of the most HAIM sounding song Don't Wanna, which is a great back to basics gem, but I haven't even had the chance up to this point to mention another head bopper, Up From a Dream, that's really rising close to the top of my favorites on Women in Music. Something about the way they repeat lines about mundane routines in life while slowly growing more and more powerful musically really wowed me, especially once that guitar solo breaks out. That's just a jam and a half right there. And although I definitely felt a little bit triggered by those uncalled for alarm clock sounds at the end, I have to admit that that's the perfect touch to close this one out. HAIM proved that they've got more gas on the tank as they get some great mileage out of the new material, and even better, they delegated some of the tracks I thought really didn't suit them very well to bonus track status, so while I do have some complaints, there's nothing too extreme outside of the fact that some of the songs just feel a bit empty or lifeless. It's definitely worth a listen, and it's an improvement on most fronts from album 2. I'm gonna give Women in Music Part 3 a strong 3.5 out of 5. Thank you guys so much for watching my review. If you want to see my thoughts on Something to Tell You, then tap this card over here. Tap here for another recent review. If you would like to help support my content financially on Patreon, then hit the top link down below. There should be a card on screen too. All of my social media accounts can be found in the description, and I will see you soon for more right here on ARTV.